Welcome back to Whistle Watch, and we have a jam-packed episode for you. We'll be covering off all the key topics, including Henry Pollock and that try. Should attack be favoured in moments just like that? Then we head to Port Elizabeth, and we'll of course be talking about Rassie Erasmus's tactics that were deployed as South Africa took on Italy. Also, what goes through a referee's mind when they have to award 2 yellow cards? All that and more on this week's episode of Whistle Watch. So Nigel, let's get straight into it, because it's not possible to have a series of Whistle Watch without discussing the tactics of Rassie Erasmus. So we'll start in Port Elizabeth. But my first question to you, Nigel, is when you review a game like this, are you grateful to be retired?
Hey, I am, Ugo. I don't think I could referee the game the way it is now. It's gone so technical, and he's a clever guy, Raz, isn't he? He's got all the little tricks in the books, little things to throw up. Within the laws of the game, to an extent, but we'll discuss those in a minute, I'm sure. But yeah, the game is very, very technical at the moment. It's not an easy balance to get. It's a very difficult balance to get in blowing the whistle and playing on. And if you get the balance right, then you contribute to a great game of rugby. You get it wrong, either way, and then it can affect what would have been a great game.
Okay, well, let's start at the start, because that's exactly where Rassie started to roll the dice and enter into the grey of our sport. The kick-off. Players deliberately in front of the ball to try and manipulate a scenario which they wanted, which was a scrum. How do you view what happened, Nigel?
Yeah, the key word, I think, Hugo, you mentioned there, deliberate, because normally in this kind of situation, if a player is in front of the kick-off, it's deemed to be offside in a scrum back. Now, the reason for that is a scrum is because the kick tends to go the sort of at least 10 metres, 15, 20 metres. So actually the effect of the players who may be slightly in front chasing that ball can be very, very minimal, if any effect at all. But yet again, they are in front. And for that reason, it's deemed to be an accidental offence and then deemed to be a scrum back. Now, what we saw in this instance is what you exactly mentioned there. It looks deliberate. It's a ploy. It's an action, as you said, to get a scrum, because they wanted a scrum, and they get on then to get a penalty from that scrum. So in this instance, if I was refereeing this game, to me, that would be a pretty straightforward, clear penalty, because it's not the normal action of being slightly in front.
Okay, going back to the deliberate act, if everyone was onside and South Africa just decided to boot the ball into touch, deliberately trying to manufacture that scrum position, can they do that? And how does a ref get the balance of trying to adjudge what is deliberate and what isn't?
Yeah, good question. A very difficult and really an impossible balance to get, really. So if you look at this sanction, even whether if you think it's deliberate or not, it's an offence that quite easily be penalised because of the action itself. Now, if he was to do that, as you said, and kicks it into touch deliberately, it becomes very, very difficult for a referee to decide then that action was deliberate, and you probably tend to see the referee then opt for a scrum. But again, I'd always go back to say this: the referee is the sole judge of the fact and the law on the field. And if the referee feels, oh, hang on, you're not pulling a quick one with me, I'm not happy with that action, that's against the sportsmanship or contrary to good sportsmanship of the game, under that law, it becomes a penalty. So the referee has the avenue, even if he can't prove it's deliberate or not, if he feels it's ungentlemanly conduct, he has the avenue to penalise it. But as you said, it's very difficult to decide whether it's deliberate or not. If you're not sure, then it's accidental, you tend to opt with a scrum. But if you feel, no, I'm sorry, I feel this is a deliberate act, very same we discussed last week, Hugo, when you know, how do you decide a player has deliberately knocked the ball out of play? So you're basically deciding, I'm sorry, you deliberately knocked that ball dead or into touch to prevent a try. So you're actually ruling on deliberately then. So the referee can do it, but a little more difficult to do so.
Okay, well, line-outs are a massive part of our game, but a line-out in face play. What was your view on that, and how would you referee that scenario?
Yeah, well, a line-out can only happen when the ball goes dead in a throw-in. So we don't have a line-out here, but what we have is something that's very similar looks to a line-out, or players being lifted up to receive a kick-off. Now, player being lifted or supported up in the air to catch the ball from the kick-off, perfectly legal. We see it every game and nothing wrong with it at all. So, within the laws of the game, this is not an illegal action. So the only question to ask around this, is it against the sportsmanship of the game, I guess, or is it an unfair advantage? So think about it. When that guy is in the air, the defenders cannot do anything to compete for that ball. So he can't play that. He can go and try and play the ball before the guy gets hold of it, but he can't touch the player in the air, and he can't touch or tackle or bind on to any of those players who are supporting him in the air. So while this happens, the opposition pretty much have to wait for him to come down, and then they can do something about it. So it's a very clever ploy, a very tactical ploy. Some like it, some feel it's not right, but it all comes down to whether you think it's fair, and also as well, will it become a dangerous action in the game? If this happens, will a player be tempted to take somebody out, and then we have a dangerous consequence to it? So at the moment, this action is legal as long as he's up and down immediately.
We spoke about lots of grey in our game. I don't think there was too much grey when we look at Jasper Wiese within the game as well. That was a straight red, not something we see all so often, is it?
Yeah, it's not like a headbutt. It's always been a part of the game, which is a straight red. An easy decision for a referee to make if it's an headbutt. The only thing maybe is a little bit more difficult about this, you're not seeing the sort of usual, full head going back and making the headbutt action. There's two players grasping each other, and you have a head going forward. So we do have a head contact here, so you deem this to be a headbutt, and yes, it's certainly a red card. Now, what would be a bit more tricky, if you had the two players coming together, the heads coming together, then that probably would have been dealt with differently. I remember having it, I'm sure we were playing in that game maybe, out in France, Paris, England against France in Paris, and Mike Brown and
Johan Ugo.
That's it, grabbing each other and actually bringing their heads together in contact. So I didn't deem that to be a headbutt, and we dealt with it there and then, and we moved on with it. But in this action here, head going forward, if it's a headbutt, it's a red card.
The incident was horrible, but what I was pleased to see is, because there's so much debate around should we have a 20-minute red card, the bunker and everything else, but this is a perfect example that the red card still exists, and anything that contravenes the spirit of the game and is absolute foul play will always be a red card, won't it, Nigel?
Yeah, it is. Any action of foul play like this, a punch, if it seemed to be a red card, a boot on somebody on the floor, a headbutt, is a straight red. There is no bunker to this. This is a straight red. The referee will give a straight red, and that's the end. But that's the one, because headbutts have no part in the game. The game is physical and difficult enough as it is. So yeah, straight red, no bunker, and that's how it should be.
Right, we're going to move on from South Africa against Italy and chat about the Lions as they took on the hybrid Oz-New Zealand team. We know we've got 40,000 British and Irish fans travelling to Australia, and you've got some of your fans there alongside. We can hear the birds cheeping, or chirping, I should say, on the farm. So welcome to Whistle Watch for this one. The first incident I want to talk about is the croc roll on Jack Morgan. How did you view that?
Yeah, look, croc roll is a dangerous part of the game. It's something we don't see as often now as we used to, because they've clamped down it, and quite rightly so. And the referee's been very, very good at doing this. So we're seeing less and less of it, which is great. Now, you need to look at the degree of danger here. So you have the croc roll, you have the action, so you have the illegal action of a croc roll, so we're always going to have a penalty here. Now, what happens next is how dangerous the referee feels that to be. So if you croc roll a player and it seems to be really dangerous, then it'll be a straight red. If you sort of lift the player and you put him down on his head or neck and it feels to be highly dangerous, it would be a red card. Now, with this instance here, even though Jack Morgan comes down sort of on the side of his head and his shoulder, the official felt it wasn't that dangerous, because the landing wasn't as dangerous as it looked, and therefore they award the yellow card. But if they felt that it was a high degree of danger, then it would have been a red card. So very, very dangerous. Something that I've never liked in the game was the croc roll, and I'm glad to see that they're being strong and getting it out of the game.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I've got to say, as a bunch of players, ex-players and current players, we considered the croc roll to be the single most dangerous action that had been allowed to be part of the game. So I'm thrilled to see it being stamped out, because whilst we don't see lots of injuries, the degree of injury you can get off the back of it could be career threatening. So I thought that was really strong refereeing, and you're absolutely spot on there. Henry Pollock. We've been talking about him. Everyone seems to love him, whether it's the celebrations or some of his antics, but he got his first try on tour. It was a tight one though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. What you see happening here, two players going for the ball. Now, the defender seems to have his hand sort of underneath the ball. And the key thing here, Ugo, we touched on it last week, if the ball is in goal, all you need to do to ground that ball is has downward pressure on it. So forget about possession or in control, you just need downward pressure. So the defender does not have downward pressure on the ball. So therefore we go to Henry Pollock's action, and he just has enough downward pressure. Now, if his fingers were to go against the side of the ball, like pushing the ball forward, like sort of on the top of his fingernails, then that wouldn't be downward pressure, it would be a knock-on. But here, he just has enough of the fingers on the side of the ball for that deemed to be downward pressure, and therefore the try, Henry Pollock's first one, is quite correctly awarded.
I love it. It was shoddy and sloppy defence versus really good attack, and Henry Pollock showing that spirit of just never giving up, so I'm thrilled that he got awarded that try. France against New Zealand, as you'd expect, New Zealand was so much better, but France did still put up a pretty decent fight considering what players have been left behind. We've got our first Emirates fans question. I've got it here for you, Nigel. Josh Brennan has been a yellow card in New Zealand-France game. Was very surprised to not see it upgraded. Could you take a look at it, please? Nigel?
Yeah, it's a very tight one, this, Ugo. This could well have been a red card. But what you have here, you have two players involved in this action. Don't get me wrong, if the two players contribute to what would be a straightforward, easy red card, then the two players can be red carded. What the referee tends to look at, he will try and identify, because one of those players, even though he's contributed to it, he's only contributing because of the more serious action of the other player. So you tend to look at the actions of the player that is actually causing the more serious part of this action. So in this instance, because of the two players involved and that changing the dynamics, they feel a bit, then it remained at the yellow card. Now, it is quite dangerous, and on another day, this may well have been upgraded to a red. So it comes down to the referee's interpretation on the day, if he felt there was enough of mitigation circumstances in the contributions to the tackle to keep it at the yellow card. But it is a really, really tight one. Wouldn't be surprised if you see this type of action again, and the next time it may well be a red. That's the type of dangerous play that it was, and that's how close the call was.
So we move on to Scotland against Fiji. We've got another Emirates fans question. What goes through a referee's head when given a second yellow card to a player like we saw in the Scotland game?
Yeah, one thing I like about this second yellow card now becoming a 20-minute red card, because what you tend to find, Ugo, a lot of these second yellow cards, which then will resulted in a red card, are very technical offences. So the player got the timing wrong, thought the ball was out, but it wasn't, then goes for it and lands up with a yellow. So they are a little bit harsh sometimes when you have a red card for two yellows, which are an interpretation of a referee, which could be slightly different to the interpretation of the player. So as a referee, you tend to be thinking, oh, I've got to give a red here, and you know, you feel sorry sometimes for the player because it's a bit harsher red. So I like the 20-minute now around this second yellow card, particularly on technical offences. So that will go through your mind as a referee, but at least now, and at the end of the day, if a player has committed two technical offences, which are yellow cards, then he has to understand that he needs to take the consequences for it. But I think a 20-minute red card for two technical yellow offences, I like that. That's good.
So England took on Argentina, and they're 2 from 2, clinching a series victory. Congratulations, Steve Borthwick and the rest of the England team. But there was moments within the game we need to discuss. Ben Curry, he got himself a yellow card that wasn't upgraded in that first half. What was your read on that, Nigel?
Yeah, to be honest, Ugo, I think Ben Curry can count himself very, very lucky here, because if you look at his actions, he's always upright. He doesn't move one bit. He doesn't dip down, and what he actually does when he's upright is his hand is by his side and he leads with that shoulder into the head. So then for me, personally, I would not be applying any mitigation here, because I'm not seeing enough of mitigation by the ball carrier because of Ben Curry. He's always making that illegal action for me. So personally, if I was refereeing this game or in the bunker, I would have probably upgraded it to a red. But the referees on the day felt that the actions of the ball carrier was enough not for it to be upgraded to a red, but I would say that Ben Curry can count himself very, very lucky. But a great, great win for England again in that series. They really always do play well when they go to Argentina.
Yeah, they absolutely love that trip. We've also got one final Emirates fans question. This weekend, I saw a few examples of referees apologising to players for wrong decisions earlier in the game. Why would they do that? Nigel, have you ever done that, and does it help at all? Good question.
Yeah, good question. Very difficult for me to answer that because I never got anything wrong. No, I did. Yeah, well, look, I think as a referee, if you get something wrong, you hold your hand up and you say, yeah, sorry, lads, I got it wrong. Now, the only thing you don't want is it to become the norm, because what you don't want is a referee apologising all game, or if it becomes the same referee apologising for mistakes every game, then you're going to be asking questions, well, you know, how are we getting these things wrong in the first place? But I think it's a good thing. If the referee gets something wrong, hold your hand up, sorry, lads, I got that wrong. Now, the only difficult part, Ugo, is this. If you're going to get something wrong and you apologise and you're unable to do anything about it, and that lands up in a match-winning score or the defining moment in that game, then you're basically admitting, sorry, I got it wrong, and the other team won the game. So it's a very difficult balance, you know. So I'm all for the honesty. Yeah, apologise, got it wrong. Let's hope that we see it minimally happening rather than becoming the norm. And I think what we're seeing more of now is the TMO coming in and telling the referee that he's missed something, and therefore the referee has to change his decision or stop the game and give a decision. So that's probably contributing. It's not that the referees are not as good as making the decisions, it's because technology is getting maybe a little bit too technical maybe, and this is why we're seeing too much of it. So nothing wrong with it, but let's hear it less and not too often.
Yeah, absolutely. Nigel, you've been brilliant as always. Thanks so much, because that's it for the segment of Whistle Watch, and thank you to everyone that sent in the Emirates fans question. Make sure you keep them coming.
Now then, Ugo, Lions were tested on the weekend, even though the scoreline was a bit one-sided. There were some challenges for them. How do you think Saturday went now, leading up particularly to the test in a week's time?
Well, it was a brilliant win, and it was a fantastic statement. You want the team, you want the Lions to be building and reaching peak performance the closer you get to Test match. So it was the perfect result, as well as performance from the British and Irish Lions. Sport, unfortunately, is not played on paper. If it was, that would have been a way tighter game than what we saw, because you look at some of the players, Shannon Frizzell, Salakai Lotto, Lau Mape, Corabetti, the Aussie-New Zealand hybrid side had loads of power, loads of experience, but unfortunately, they didn't come with much of a game. But the Lions were completely dominant and hopefully providing Andy Farrell with a few headaches before he names his Test team on Thursday.
Now then, as an ex-Lion yourself, what is your prediction for the weekend? I'm looking, can't wait to see this game, because I think Australia got a lot of talent, very clever, shrewd coach in Joe Smith as well. They're going to bring something special to this game, I think. I can't wait to see the game, but what is your view? Lions will be too strong, you think?
I hope so. I absolutely hope so. You're spot on with Joe Schmidt. Joe Schmidt, has he ever coached a bad side? Well, absolutely not. Took Ireland to #1 side in the world. He won multiple trophies of Leinster at the European Cup, and he'll be looking to do something similar with Australia starting this Saturday. His contract runs up at the end of this year. I think we've underestimated how good Australia are going to be. We've seen how fast a lot of the provincial sides have really started. And if they can get a fast start, then they can create momentum, create a real sense of belief. But the Lions are trying to achieve something that they've never done before, which is win back-to-back series. That hasn't been done before in the professional era. So win in 2013 and 2025. I think the Lions will have too much this Saturday, and I do predict the Lions to win 2-1, and therefore a series win for the Lions.
Ooh, 2-1, there we are. Like a score in the racecourse.
Thanks so much, Nigel. That's it for this week's episode of Whistle Watch. I'm actually heading to the airport now because I am heading off to Brisbane, where the Lions take on Australia in that first Test match. So make sure you do come back, because we'll be unpacking and getting into the weeds of all the very best bits of that. Take care for now. We'll see you on the other side.